This is your home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. We start off from Parliament because this is an issue we've been watching the whole day, and they've been haggling behind closed doors. The NPP and NDC MPs, they asked for a quick break whilst they were trying to approve some ministerial nominees appointed by President Akufo-Addo. They've been vetted. The chairman of the Appointments Committee has laid that report, and they were supposed to, deliberate on it, but they took a break, and it's been hours since that, and still no ending sight. My colleague, Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante, has been monitoring events for us in Parliament, joins us live. Kweku, I can see that it's still an empty Parliament or empty chamber. What really is the issue?
So very soon we expect almost all MPs to take their seats, because we expect the Speaker of Parliament to come in to gavel the House in session, because about 3 hours ago, MPs decided to take an hour break to focus and also deliberate on some key issues. Very shortly, I'll go to MP for Ningo Pram Sam George and have some conversations on what might have taken place. But the Appointment Committee's report, that having to do with 6 nominees of the President for ministerial, deputy ministerial, and ministers of state, was just about to be debated when the leadership informed the Speaker that they wanted to take 1 hour adjournment to deliberate on some matters behind closed doors, to continue the negotiations. It's been a stalemate since then. 3 hours it took for the House to go into what is called a joint caucus meeting to be able to agree on something. They couldn't. Honorable Sam George has joined me here, and I'll go to Honorable Sam George shortly on for some of the things that happened behind closed doors. Honorable Sam George, so you took 1 hour break. It took longer than that. Clearly, from what we are hearing, no compromise has been reached. Is the minority backing down on some of the stands you have taken early on?
What are we supposed to back down from?
Well, to support the government to pass their ministers. These are some of the critical ministerial positions that have not been filled for a while now.
Well, the minority has taken a principled position from the get-go on the size of government and the fact that we do not subscribe to the current size of government. It's an undisputable fact that the minority's position is well known, so there is nothing to back down from. We are determined to go to a vote on all the issues, and it is my hope and aspiration that we'll hold our line.
Well, you're not just being a difficult minority. Government needs you to cooperate on some of these measures. Like I said, these are key ministries. Are you saying that the Agric Ministry should not have a substantive minister? The Minister for Trade and Industry. These have all been empty for a while now since their ministers resigned. They have caretaker ministers, but there are those who have said that without substantive ministers to lead policy, they will struggle.
Well, you just gave some of the examples of the ministries, but what about the Ministry of Chieftaincy that has a new appointee? Couldn't the Ministry of Chieftaincy have been subsumed under the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts? You have a Deputy Minister of Energy being promoted now to a substantive Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance. You have a Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Local Government also being promoted again to a substantive Minister of State. Those for us are profligacies, and you need to understand the fact that we are the place where everybody, pensioners, individual bondholders, children, I mean, even newborn babies in Ghana are having to give something off. They're foregoing their vaccines because government doesn't have money to buy vaccines. And what exactly is the government giving off in this debt exchange program? Everybody, even foreign, the Paris Club, foreigners, we're asking China to take a haircut. Everybody's taking a haircut, but the government is growing an Afro-punk.
Is the position the same on the 3 tax measures?
Well, we're treating all the issues individually. There's the issue of the nominees. There's the issue those are the ministerial nominees. There's also the issue of the judges, 4 judges to the Supreme Court. There is then the 3 tax measures, and then there's the vexed matter of the CI. So each one is different, and each one, the position of the minorities is unique to each of those situations.
I mean, you just mentioned the CI. We have been told that government side wanted some straight off of a sword. I know you don't want to give so much of what happened behind closed doors, but we understand they are now amenable to some changes, agreeing with you that the Ghana card should not be made a sole identity document. That should make you come toe-to-toe to government and just get government business through, or you are still not amenable to that concession?
Well, I don't know about trade-offs. Parliament is not a marketplace, so I don't know how there'll be a trade-off. What I know is that we try to build consensus in Parliament. And the fact needs to be made that when we make the case that making the national identification card, or what you call the Ghana card, or the ECOWAS card, whichever nomenclature I used to call it, the sole card for getting registered under Article 42 of the Constitution to exercise your franchise is a very unintelligent position. People think that we are being high-handed, but you have an electoral commission that is the biggest threat to our democracy, and members on the majority side are beginning to see it. They also have rural communities. Why you think everybody in Swame has been giving a Ghana card? Absolutely not. There are people who would most likely vote for the NPP in Menchia North who do not have the Ghana card. You have MPs from rural communities who are MPP MPs where people just do not have the Ghana card. And so MPs are beginning to wake up to the reality that this goes beyond the party's block position to what it means for they themselves as members of parliament and their elections. And so I think that we're coming to that place where common sense and logic is prevailing over partisan considerations. But you have an electoral commission that remains recalcitrant. Don't forget, they say they are independent. They say that, and so nobody can dictate to them what to do. But what you should bear in mind is that even though we cannot dictate to the electoral commission what they should do by way of the CI, if we're united in this house, with 2/3 of this house, if the CI is late, we can throw it out. And again, the EC doesn't even have audience on the floor. And so the CI, it comes back to our friends on the other side. The CI, the Electoral Commission, does not commissioner is a stranger to Parliament. She has no audience before this august house. Okay, she cannot come onto the floor without our permission, and in fact, she cannot lay the CI. The CI can only be laid by the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. And so, if he is minded, and if he's going to walk his talk and listen to his own caucus and what his caucus is saying to him about the fact that they are against the Ghana card being the only way of getting registered for purposes of general elections or public elections in this country, the majority leader who doubles as Minister for Parliamentary Affairs would decline to lay that bill. If that bill is even laid, Parliament, if we have 2/3, can throw it out, or that CI, we can throw it out.
Do you expect business to continue? Do you expect the motion moved and having been seconded? Do you expect the debate to continue for a vote to happen when the Speaker comes back to gavel the House in session?
Well, the Speaker gave indication of what his intentions were. He said he will complete this today. So the best I can say in my native Ghana is, or in Ghana to be Emefa Apawu, in Dangme to be Munanolewa Makpaho, or as many chief speakers will say,
Right. Thank you very much, Honorable Sam George. So that is Honorable Sam George, MP for Ningo Pram, clearly saying that despite the House going into caucus for close to 3 hours, no agreement has been reached. There were some trade-offs. You had me put it to him that the majority side wanted some sort of a compromise. They said that they were going to back the minority on their position that the CI must not be made the sole identity document to register as a voter. They made that proposal to the majority. They were even willing to sign under an undertaking. The minority said no, unless you amend the CI, you put it before us. Let's say that the CI has not been laid. If it is not laid, you cannot amend it. And so they are trying to put it to this Electoral Commission to make those changes before it comes to Parliament to lay it. That is the state of play now. No agreement in sight, and it is getting late. More MPs, as I see from my back, are coming in from their offices. They expect the Speaker to come back, and we'll see what happens next. Emefa.
We'll talk about other issues that are emerging, but first off, I'll need you to clarify this for us. We've been talking about the NDC's chairman, also the NPP's general secretary, all trooping into the House. What exactly was their mission? I'm sure you've been finding out from MPs whilst they've gone on the break. Were they part of the deliberations? What exactly is their mission in the House?
So it is becoming such a normal thing in Parliament when such crucial businesses are taking place on the floor, where leadership on both sides of the parties come to Parliament. So the last time the Speaker of Parliament was elected, Johnson Esedun was here. NPP leadership were also here. And the last time there was a censure motion, NPP leadership were here. I remember Justin Frimpong Kodia sat there. But you will see in your short, Kese will pan the camera, you will see Johnson Esedun he is still here. The National Communications Officer of the NDC, Sami Jemfi, is also here. I think he just stepped up. And some members of the National Communications Directorate of the NDC, they've all come in here to try and offer some sort of support to their members, given the hardline stances that have been taken. And it's very interesting. You see where Johnson Esedun-Ketia is sitting. He's sitting directly opposite the minority MPs. He wants to be able to see whatever is going on their side. And so that is exactly what he has done. My sources say that, the party put out a statement some few days ago urging all NDC MPs not to travel and to stay in chamber and do the business that will come up, including rejecting these ministerial nominees, rejecting the ACCI if it is ever laid, and rejecting those 3 tax measures that government is seeing as crucial to get an IMF deal. And so today he was here clearly to see that deal that they made with their MPs is stuck through, and clearly you see where he starts seeing what their MPs are doing and sometimes communicating with the leadership of the House. They are not leaving any stone unturned. They want to see through this. And you see, Justin Frimpong, you have not seen him since the House went on that 1-hour suspension. He has not returned, but my understanding is that he is still within the presence of Parliament, offering the needed support to the NPP MPs, just as Johnson Esedun-Ketia is offering that support to the NDC MPs. I approached them a while ago to try and see if they will speak to me. They said they are not speaking to me on the record now. They want to see the business through, and then if there's anything, they will offer that to the media.
Today would have been a rather short day, even though we're hoping to go into the night. But it appears the first business, which is the approval of these nominees, have not even been cleared. There's no conclusion on the matter. There was an item 2, which was supposed to be the deliberations on the revenue mobilization measures, or the taxes, the 3 taxes that were supposed to be deliberated. What then is the way forward? Does it look like these 2 items will be deliberated all tonight, or will go on into tomorrow?
So those 3 tax measures, although it's appearing as the latter item on the floor of Parliament, it's actually the most important one, because today, Thursday, Parliament decided that those were the 3 revenue measures they were going to deal with. The expectation then was that, let's take away the ministerial nominees first, then let's get to that. But at 7 p.m., there's been no decision whatsoever on that ministerial nominees. It is clear that if it goes ahead, the ministerial nominees may fail to go through because the NDC MPs are closing ranks, they are sticking with each other, and then they'll move on to the next item on the agenda. That will be the 3 taxes if government still wants to push it through and shoot that down also. So the understanding we are getting now is that the government side is trying to count their losses for now. They may be willing to come back and make an appeal to the Speaker to adjourn sitting so that they can continue the dialogue. Ordinarily, NPP MPs have 138 MPs, and they should be able to see through every matter if they stick through. But we know that 2 NPP MPs are not around as of yet, which is shortening their numbers. It could even be more, because at the time they were sitting, I was counting, and they had some seats very empty. The NDC side also had 1 notable absence, Teresa Ladi Ayamba. We understand she will come back. And so both sides of the House are closing ranks, getting all their members on the floor. But the majority side have a few numbers not currently present, which makes it difficult for them to push through. And this is also a secret vote. The last time there was a secret vote on ministerial nominees, the minority lost because some of their own MPs even joined the majority MPs on this matter. And so government wants to avoid a repeat or a situation where you go and take this vote and then you have the minority carrying the day, and that is why they want to continue dialoguing. My understanding is that these businesses will not happen. The minority say, you heard this, I'm just saying that today they want to stay there till the next day, even if it will take that for them to trash out this government business. But the agreements that I'm getting from the majority side is that they may want to appeal to the Speaker to adjourn sitting today when he comes, and then there will be some kind of conversations going to tomorrow or even next week. Mind you, Parliament is expected to go on Easter break next week. If they go, they are expected to return in May. And some of these key government businesses cannot wait. The 3 tax measures is a precondition to getting an IMF deal. Can an IMF deal wait till May? The minority side say, well, they don't care for now. They want the government side to make some major concessions before they will support them in getting these measures through.
Okay, I'll allow you to take a quick breather whilst we wait for Parliament or the Speaker to gavel, the session into place. But before I let you off quickly, Kweku, I'm sure you've been finding out the talk among MPs, the backbenchers especially, because the debate was just about getting started when Anodompre came on his feet and asked for this particular break, and interestingly was supported by Governors Kwame Agboja on the other side. What really is the talk? How are the backbenchers especially taking this?
So, Emefa, this has become such a political footballing in the House. It is hardline stance. The minority are closing ranks. They say that none of the ministerial nominees, the 6 of them, Katie Hammond, Dr. Amin Adams, Obi Amoa, Stephen Asamoah Boateng, Stephen Amoah Sticker, and these are the persons that the president has nominated, as well as the tax measures.
Okay.
They are unwilling at all to take any compromise stance. Indeed, when their leadership agreed to go behind the scenes and talk to leadership of the majority, some of them were not even happy. It was the same on the majority side. They said that let's go in, you never know what will happen. But the leadership are clearly being calculated about this. They want to have a conversation, have some agreements before they will put those votes. So when it comes to the backbenchers, on both sides, it's hardline stance, all of them clearly sticking to the decisions that their party and their leadership here in the House have taken. They're just waiting for the Speaker of Parliament to put the matters to a vote. And if it has to be a voice vote, they will shout. If it has to be that they will go to the booth and vote, they will also go in there and vote. Clearly, we vote, and clearly seeing the leadership of the parties coming in Parliament shows you the stakes that are at play here, and both sides do not want to make any big compromises that will affect their bases and also going into the 2024 election, because these are all things that the political parties think will inure to their benefit in the next election.
Well, we'll stay with you, Kweku. That's our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent. Great reporting there, Kweku. We'll stay with you till it ends today. And this is Joy News. We have you covered when it comes to all that is happening in Parliament. We're also live on myjoyonline.com, also on all our social media platforms. It's a good time to start sharing that link for everyone to be updated on what exactly is happening in Parliament. And our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent, Kweku Asante, is there for us, giving us all that you need to know. But let's cover some other areas, and then we'll take you to Parliament as and when we ought to, because there appears to be a simmering union that the NDC's presidential hopeful John Dramani Mahama is forging with many of the country's credible national civil society organizations to push through a constitutional reform. And we know that it was evident in the high turnout from the civil society bloc at yesterday's public lecture on political party campaign financing, which happened yesterday. Well, if you don't believe me, last night we saw a number of these civil society group bipartisan legislation. They were all there to support former President John Dramani Mahama in this particular drive, because there had been some collaboration earlier. We hear the substantive matters that the former president has been raising, but then first, let's hear him talk about that collaboration between himself and civil society on these matters.
In an interaction I had with civil society organizations and other public advocacy groups in November last year, we had a broad-based discussion on issues of governance reform and how we can strengthen our democracy and restore faith in our constitutional governance and the rule of law. A theme that kept recurring during this meeting was the issue of campaign financing and its link to corruption and influence peddling in government. This topic, I believe, is very close and dear to the hearts and minds of many Ghanaians. I do not have all the answers, but it is my expectation that as a key stakeholder in Ghana's political space, my comments on this issue will elevate the public discourse on the matter and hopefully lead to necessary reforms in this area.
Well, a study by the Center for Democratic Development mentions that a political party and then presidential candidates will need up to $100 million to prosecute a very vibrant campaign. So that's the issue that former president is hoping to get a solution to. Listen to him proffer some proposals.
In recent times, some financing of political campaigns has come from illegal activities, and I think Dr. Asante referred to that, such as illegal mining, oil bunkering, fraudulent businesses, procurement deals in the award of contracts, and among others. The CDD study even reported that there could be a strong association between financing of political parties and organized crime in Ghana. This is indeed worrying. Worrying because it has the potential of mortgaging our governance system to criminals. If that happens, our democracy will be gradually turned into a plutocracy, a country ruled indirectly by only a few wealthy individuals. On government support for funding political parties, some have argued that the only funding that may be advanced to parties and cannot be concealed in secrecy is public funding of these parties. This refers to government giving financial resources or indirect assistance to political parties. As mentioned, in the absence of such support and given the huge cost of political activities, wealthy party financiers take over as political godfathers who determine electoral outcomes and all that follows it. And as I stated earlier, because of our current economic crisis, additional state financing may not be a viable option at this time. Even if that became an option in the future, I recommend that we put in place an explicit public funding of political parties bill in a bipartisan and inclusive manner to regulate this phenomenon. I further recommend that should public funding of political parties be scaled up in the foreseeable future, then an independent and credible institution must be selected to administer the state resources advanced to political parties. In that regard, a sharing formula could be established to ensure fairness, and specific disclosure requirements on beneficiary parties must be imposed. This must be complemented by auditing and publication of party accounts.
Well, a number of the civil society groups were on the same page with former President John Dramani Mahama. We can hear from the Executive Director of IDEC, Dr. Akwete.
Of working together to transform economies and societies. So having looked at what the situation is and having read the concept paper that we got, we thought that in the next 30 years, the challenge is, could we rebuild our parties into development agents? And there is data that shows, and Kojo referred to, the marginalization that the majority voters themselves complain of, women, youth. And they say this system is not working. In fact, all the arrangements made under the 1992 Constitution to ensure that women, youth, people with disability, chiefs, and so on would be represented in the local government system has failed. It hasn't worked. And we sincerely believe that if we do not look at the structures we created, the assumptions, and what has caused this failure, we may lose the next 30 years. And we tend to therefore have a different approach, which is that probably in the next 30 years, we want to see that our parties do not do just elections, but they really are building a nation and transforming our economy.
Well, earlier, the former Auditor General, Daniel Yao-Domelevo, says the unregulated campaign funding is breeding so much corruption in the public space.
Let's face it, these amounts are huge figures. I don't know how much it is, but they are not philanthropies. They are investing, and they have to recoup it. So when they get back to office, or they get the opportunity one day, they have to recoup, and recoup with interest, such that the subsequent elections or the next or upcoming elections, they may have enough money to fund it. But even if it is a one-off transaction, you may agree with me that the person may have to refund that money to wherever he or she got it from. Even if it is his personal money, he must have to recover it. How do you recover it? I don't think we expect that it is recovered from the salaries that are paid to them. I don't believe that any of them earn salary. In fact, be it president or minister, earn salary which is enough to pay back those amounts. Therefore, one has to get himself or herself involved in some procurement malpractices or financial engineering, re-engineering, so that he can get some funds and pay back. So I think it's a very important topic which we should have discussed yesteryears ago when our democracy started. But it's better late than never.
Well, let's stay a while longer in the camp of the opposition NDC, and we know that today they've officially closed nominations for both presidential and parliamentary contests. According to the party, the exercise has been peaceful so far without any incidents. Chairman of the NDC's election committee, Kakre Samoa, says vetting of the aspirants will begin next week for the presidential, but the dates for the parliamentary is yet to be announced after Parliament goes on break. He's been speaking to my colleague Samuel Imbura.
In the past 3 days, what we've been doing is receiving the filled out nomination forms of the presidential aspirants. 4 persons picked and 4 persons have returned them and paid the appropriate fee. So that matter is closed. The next step is for them to be vetted. Most probably next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, the presidential aspirants will be vetted. Those who go through, their names will be on the ballot paper for the internal primaries that will be held on 13th May 2023. Whoever wins becomes our candidate for the 2024 presidential elections.
So tell us about the parliamentary. You technically closed nominations yesterday.
Yes, we closed everything yesterday 5 p.m. So our people are doing they are processing it. After they've done the processing, we will know the numbers that filed as against those who picked and the constituencies in which they filed, and then we'll let you know.
So per the automated system, how many people picked the forms to contest in the constituencies that have not been affected by the ban?
That's about 820 persons who picked the nomination forms online. They are supposed to return them or file them physically in the constituency offices. So all that is being processed, and at the appropriate time we'll know the exact number out of that 820 who actually filed, and make that information available to the press.
What is the status of the 27 constituencies that you kept?
Conversations are still ongoing at the level of the national leadership, and as soon as we get some conclusion on that conversation, directives will be issued and they will be brought back into the system to participate in the process.
So one of the reasons you actually postponed the vetting of the parliamentary aspirants had to do with the fact that you directed your sitting MPs to stay in Parliament. Yes. When exactly are you going to vet the aspirants?
The parliamentary aspirants, you mean? Yeah. That's next 2 weeks, first week of April. We'll vet them because Parliament will actually rise, all things being equal, on 31st March. So the first week in April, we'll vet the parliamentary aspirants.
Well, the presidential hopeful, Kwabena Dufo, was one of the last to file before the nominations were closed. He's urging the party supporters to eschew politics of insults and rather unite ahead of the 2024 elections.
Your party, let's make the party very attractive. How do you make it? By making sure that the grassroots are well resourced. That we make sure the grassroots become richer than they are now. And we'll do it. So that anytime we go to war, we win. 2024, we are going to kick the elephant into the bush. The elephant will go to the bush. Oh, elephant, Otifi, Obeko. And we have to work very hard. You have to work hard. The grassroots, the foundation of our party, should be resourced, should be made stronger than it is now, so that they can fight the elephant to go into the bush. We will not turn this into a rally. as I mentioned, I have submitted my forms for the contest. But I'd like to appeal to you. Don't let us insult people. I don't like it. Don't you ever insult anybody because of me. I don't want that. It's only the Lord who gives power, not insults. And don't forget, that is a family, one family. And you see, we are one family, aren't we? One family. How do you insult your family member? After May 13th, we are going to come together and fight hard and drive the elephant away. So if you keep on insulting one another, coming together may be a big problem for us. So don't do that. Tell your neighbors, those who are insulting, they should stop that. What we are looking for is what? Power. And power can only come when we have a united party, a not divided party. A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Well, this is Joy News Prime here on the Joy News channel, also on myjoyonline.com and all our social media platforms, where we've been talking about Parliament today. And after that long break, which was supposed to be just for an hour, it looks like Parliament is back in session and the Speaker is taking his seat. It's a good time to take you back there. They were supposed to be deliberating on the ministerial appointees, whether they would be approved by the House, and a number of issues that they were supposed to be dealing with, including the 3 taxes as well. Let me take you live now for proceedings.
From east side, it presupposes that they are tired. They cannot even speak, allow 2 people to even speak. That is the more reason why we are saying that let's adjourn. Let's go home, then tomorrow we come with renewed vigor. The Speaker, we have written, 7 people have already tabled their names, and we are yet to add 4 to make it 10. So if 10 people are going to contribute from this side, then 10 will contribute from that side. It's already 7:31. Our Muslim brothers have not even broken their fast. And tomorrow they will fast again. This is the more reason why on this side we are empathizing with our colleague Muslim brothers. Not so long ago, the Honorable Deputy Majority Whip, Honorable Abib, said he's privileged to be the only Muslim in leadership. Today we are empathizing with Muslims and we are saying no. Mr. Speaker, we may not be fasting, but when your brothers are fighting, empathize with them. Based on that, Mr. Speaker, 10 people will speak from each side. But we are still making a submission to you that Right Honorable Speaker, because we came here at 6 o'clock, it's 7:31, we are still here, and tomorrow we are coming again. At least there is no timeline on this item. So, honorable colleagues, let's adjourn. Let's have ample time tomorrow. The whole Ghana is watching to see how we are going to debate on this ministerial nominee. It is not like the ordinary one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Honorable members, to guide me to take the decision on the numbers. How many minutes per person to debate? How many minutes? How many minutes?
Mr. Speaker,
yes.
We propose
leadership.
We propose 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yes, 5 minutes. Yes. 5 minutes. And Mr. Speaker,
how many minutes do you propose?
We stand by our 1 for the motion. We stand by our 1, and we propose 5 minutes. Yes.
Yes. How many minutes?
Mr. Speaker, the report is a 62-page report. At least 10 minutes. Every member who gets the opportunity to speak should be given at least 10 minutes to speak.
Honorable members, I have listened to your submissions. I will permit 3 pairs each caucus at 10 minutes per person. That will take us to 1 hour. Then after that, we'll take the next step. My proposal is that we'll take the decision tomorrow, but we'll finish the debate today. 3 from each side of the house, making 6. 10 minutes each. 10 minutes each. 3. Honorable members, motion has been moved and seconded. Is now for the debate of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me thank the appointment committee for the report. And Mr. Speaker, as I go through the report, very clear to me that the ministers have been vetted based on the Constitution, Article 78. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable members, I repeat, motion has been moved and seconded. Is now for the debate of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank the appointment committee for the report. Mr. Speaker, first of all, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the appointment, it was very, very clear, Mr. Speaker, that they had appointment 1 to the local government ministry, and Mr. Speaker, we already have a local government minister. The House is in. Mr. Speaker, there's no order in the House. I'll start with the nominee for the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Honorable Katie Hammond. Mr. Speaker, I have told the Honorable Katie Hammond, who worked at the Energy Ministry as a Deputy Energy Minister for a very long time. Mr. Speaker, clearly, the Minister... Sit down.
Honorable members, please resume your seats. Debate to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I started talking about the Ministry of Trade and Industry. and the nominee, K.T. Hammond. Mr. Speaker, I talked about his experience at the Ministry of Energy. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Trade and Industry is a very critical ministry. And Mr. Speaker, a lot of questions were asked of the nominee when he was asked about the issue of our excessive importation of almost everything. This is what the minister said. He said he agreed and that we should cut back and make sure that we can reduce our imports, almost $10 billion in imports. But Mr. Speaker, it was very remarkable when he said that the government had already met and they were talking about strategies to address a huge import bill. And a question was asked of him about the one district, one factory policy that clearly was aimed at reducing imports, making sure we can cut back on imports, making sure that our exports will increase. And it was very clear from his answer and from the steps the government has said that was confirmed by the Ministry of Finance that the one district, one factory has been a monumental failure after we have pumped almost over $10 billion, not only on tax exemptions and other government support. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the objectives that were set for that policy, one district, one factory, to create employment, to increase export, to basically cut back on our import. Mr. Speaker, the basic items, whether it's rice, whether it's oil, almost everything we import. And it was clear that that one district, one factory has been a monumental failure. Mr. Speaker, he talked about another important issue which has to do with the challenges we've had with foreigners who have been competing with Ghanaians in our trade industry. And Mr. Speaker, he quite frankly really made reference to this problem that has really not been resolved. And this is an area that we have to really look at. But Mr. Speaker, fundamentally, one of the points about these appointments, all these 6 ministers, that these are, especially most of them are our colleagues. But our point is that this government who has run us to where we are, as we speak, our country, as everybody knew, have moved from 120 billion in debt and we are over 600 billion. We are now at a debtor country, over 600 billion in debt. The government is now, as we know, going through a debt exchange program, Mr. Speaker. But clearly, what everybody has called on this government to do is to take steps to reduce its bloated size of government and take steps to make the people of Ghana and all the people who have invested in Ghana, who are sacrificing, feel that this government is taking some responsibility in this crisis we find ourselves. Clearly it is not. And we believe, for example, Mr. Speaker, we specifically talked about the ministries and some of where the ministries are going. Mr. Speaker, where on earth will this government send another minister to the Ministry of Local Government? The Ministry of Local Government already have a substantive minister. Mr. Speaker, we've even taken the Minister of Sanitation, which is a main function of local government, out of the Ministry of Local Government. Yet one of the nominees, our good friend, the longest deputy minister, is being nominated as a minister to the local government. Mr. Speaker, clear duplication and waste. We have said in this debate, Mr. Speaker, that these ministers are a clear duplication and that this government must reduce its size. It's ironic, Mr. Speaker, to hear that the former president, John Mahama, has made it clear. This government is at 86 ministers. It was at 110 and now 86. Still way out, very wasteful, and a long list of other appointees that cannot be justified. So clearly, Mr. Speaker, we believe this was a clear opportunity for the government to have realigned some of these ministries and cut back on these bloated appointments. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of illegal mining, the Minister of Agriculture was asked about it. He talked and lamented about water bodies and how terrible they are across the country. Every district we've gone to. Mr. Speaker, if you recall, President Akufo-Addo said he had basically put down his presidency on the fight against Galamsey. Again, in this area, I'm sure he's the first to admit that that effort has been a failure. We're listening to the former Minister of Environment, Science and Technology. Mr. Speaker, an open indictment of the government, and he said that from the Flagstaff House all the way down, that everybody was engaged in Galamsey. I'm not saying it. He said that publicly. Mr. Speaker, that is very unfortunate. And we must take steps, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we were talking about the National Day of the Forest and the things that we must do as a country to protect our forests and to protect our water bodies. And its implication to our country's future, its implication to food production, its implication for our farmers and for cocoa production. No wonder we find ourselves in where we are, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll take you to page 27 of the report, Mr. Speaker. And in page 27 of the report, Mr. Speaker, I will quote, when asked to state his views on course of his Excellency the President to cut down on the size of his appointment in the wake of Ghana's economic challenge, the nominee stated that he is not the appointing authority but understands the reasoning behind it. Mr. Speaker, there cannot be any reason, as I've stated, there cannot be any reason why we should have those bloated numbers that we have. Mr. Speaker, I think the Minister of Chieftaincy, the nominee for the Minister of Chieftaincy, also lamented on the issue of chieftaincy and how important it is. But he talked about our critical issue in this country, and that has to be dispute, land issues, land litigation. Mr. Speaker, that is an area that must be addressed and must be addressed well, because, Mr. Speaker, they did a study and asked the critical constraint of our country, and it has to do with how we manage land, and the disputes across the country, chieftaincy disputes across the country, has to do with land. And, Mr. Speaker, this ministry is a very serious one, and we must really look at it. But, Mr. Speaker, more importantly, Mr. Speaker, how the issue of Galamsey is also connected with all these areas where chieftaincy disputes are, is an area that we also must talk about. Mr. Speaker, I think that clearly, Mr. Speaker, the other minister, the deputy minister, was asked a very interesting question about a recent policy of government on gold for oil. Mr. Speaker, and it's an issue we have to talk about, and I've stated it clearly that I do not know anywhere in this world where you take your gold and you go and they give you gallons of oil. We know that the issue has always been how we manage forests, because we use a lot of resources to buy oil, especially for
dollars. Just less than a minute.
Because we use dollars, we need to find a way to protect for ring-fenced dollars to be able to get crude oil. But, Mr. Speaker, it is very, very clear to me that that policy must be refined, and nobody should be claiming clearly that crude prices or petroleum prices have gone down because of this policy. We recently probed into it, and it was very clear to us that, frankly, the oil that has been imported in this country through this policy is less than even 5%, Mr. Speaker. So it cannot be that it's because of, as the Vice President said, it's because of him or it's because of the policy. But clearly, it has to do with the fact that crude prices are internationally coming down. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by making it clear and emphasizing our stand that it is very clear the people of Ghana have called on this government that the size of government is abnormal, it has to be reduced, and we believe that this is an opportunity to cut back. So it's very clear, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, we love these our friends we have worked with them in Parliament. But in the principal stand, Mr. Speaker, they've been appointed at the wrong time in a bloated government, and we cannot support that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Yes, Honourable Member. Are you on your feet to contribute to the debate? Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to add my voice to motion number 8. Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to listen to the nominees. I've had the opportunity to read the 63-page report ably presented by the first Deputy Speaker. And I believe all the nominees are colleagues. We know them. We know their competence. They earn their salaries as members of Parliament, and I believe they can serve this country well. And I ask the House to approve of them to serve this country of us. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Blackwell.
I'm most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, in contributing to the motion, I want to place on record that after going through the 63-page report, there are a litany of matters that require editorial work. And because of time, as a Speaker, I will appeal that we have an arrangement where we can make corrections probably after the deliberation. Some of them are quite major issues that will require corrections. And I hope that probably someone at the clerk's office will contact us so that we can effect the necessary corrections. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, our country is at the crossroads. We are faced with the worst economic crisis in living memory. Terminologies that were hitherto unknown in the political lexicon of our country are now a normal feature. Words like debt restructuring, domestic debt exchange program, financial haircuts, pensioner bond holders, individual bond holders, all up in arms about haircuts and how they cannot have access to their life savings, to their investments. Mr. Speaker, these are times that will have required in any country where there is sensitive leadership, empathetic leadership, it will have required that we will not be gathered here today discussing appointments of ministers and an increase in the ministerial numbers. Because if you do the analysis, by having a new minister of state at the local government ministry, we are adding on. We are going to have more ministers. And Mr. Speaker, at this time, as we speak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Finance Minister of our country, is gone to China, begging. He is begging for debt restructuring. Our President, only a few days ago in the message on the State of the Nation, was reporting to us how the begging with the Paris Club, begging with China, how it appears to be going well, and that he is quite hopeful that by end of this month, March, we will secure a $3 billion bailout from the IMF, even though, by all indication, that won't happen. We are not even featuring on the IMF Executive Board calendar. So, Mr. Speaker, how on earth, when everybody is saying, including diplomats, and what the President does to them, you are begging them, you want their empathy, you want their money, you want their debt forgiveness. And they say, okay, we hear you. you to show good faith, show good leadership, lead by example, reduce the size of your government, and you say they are meddling in your affairs. Meanwhile, you went to them. They were sitting at their somewhere, as we say, in Ghana. You went to them are begging, they are advising you, and you say, you listen. CSOs, the religious organizations of our country. I have read statements from the Catholic Bishop Conference, from the Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, from Organized Labor, TUC. Everybody is saying, President Akufo-Addo, reduce the number of your ministers. Mr. Speaker, if you read Article 76 of our Constitution, it provides there shall be a cabinet which shall consist of the President, the Vice President, and not less than 10, and not more than 19 ministers of state. Mr. Speaker, this country can be run by 19 ministers by our Constitution. I read page 49 of this report, and one of the nominees, Honorable Amin Anta, was saying that there is no ceiling, there is no cap, so the president can do whatever he wants. Page 49 of this report. Mr. Speaker, how reckless can we be? Already, as we speak, Mr. Speaker, we are grappling with hordes of strange portfolios at the presidency. I hold in my hands the 2021 presidential staffers list presented to this House. We have as many as 337 political appointees at the presidency. Why? Why, Mr. Speaker? And some of the portfolios, Mr. Speaker, if you come to page 15, overseer of the National Cathedral. Well, Mr. Speaker, I have overseen the National Cathedral more than anybody. And yet I am not being paid for that. Somebody is being paid at the presidency as overseer of the National Cathedral. We have a church relations manager, diaspora church mobilization officer. We have focal person, La Francophonie, technical director, La Francophonie, coordinator, monitoring evaluation secretariat, coordinator, special development initiative secretariat. Mr. Speaker, you come to page 24 of the list, and there are even more scandalous portfolios. Youth Ambassador for Diaspora Affairs, Mr. Obin Bediaku. You have Operations Officer, you have Program Director, then you have Senior Program Officer, then you have Program Manager, Manager Operations. I mean, all kinds of nebulous amorphous positions. Mr. Speaker, 337. Where are we going? Already between last year and this year, a whopping 82 million Ghana cedis has been added, Mr. Speaker, to government expenditure. We cannot continue this way, Mr. Speaker. We cannot continue this way. That is why this side has said, as a matter of principle, that we will have nothing to do. You see, it's not about the persons involved. They are colleagues. We know them, we've worked with them. One of them is the chairman of my own committee, the Honorable Brian Champon. We have a lot going together. We all belong to the Odadia fraternity and all of that. It's not about him. It's about the principle, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, there are ministries in this country that can be merged. Why in this time of economic crisis should we have Ministry of Agric different from Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture? Can't we merge it? Why should we have information and communication separate? A few years ago, it was one ministry. Why should we have sanitation and local government? It used to be one ministry. Why should we have railways and transport, separate ministries? Why? Why? When senior citizens are up in arms, I read their statement they issued a few days ago that the finance ministers pledged that they will be paid. A pledge made in this house when we debated the domestic debt exchange program. The finance minister has defaulted. They are waiting for their coupons. They don't have it. And we have all these ministries. Can't we make chieftaincy and tourism? Why should we have these separate ministries? So, Mr. Speaker, it's the height of insensitivity. It's the height of lack of empathy, the height of cruelty, that in the midst of this disaster that they have inflicted upon us, they want to inflict more, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I have read the literature. When Jamaica was going through a similar debt restructuring program, when they ran into economic crisis. Apart from the finance minister resigning, the governor resigning, the prime minister resigning, they identified as many as 40 institutions, ministries, departments, and agencies. 40, not 14, for the avoidance of doubt. 40. And they slashed them, did away with them, downsized. And that is how they got the public confidence. And the people came along. Yes, we know times are tough, times are hard. But leadership should lead by example, Mr. Speaker. This is not the time to do yenti obia. And as for me, I'm just appointing and I'll keep appointing. Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue this way. And that is why I salute colleagues on this side who are standing resolute with the Ghanaian people, with civil society, with organized labor, with the diplomatic corps, who are all urging the president to downsize, to cut, and to slash his obscenely obese, the elephantine size of government. We cannot continue this way. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to draw attention to Article 79 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, what has been the convention? Mr. Speaker, Article 79 provides that the president may, in consultation with the Minister of State and with the prior approval of Parliament, appoint one or more deputy ministers to assist the minister in the performance of his functions. Mr. Speaker, what has been the practice consistent with this provision of the Constitution is that when you don't have a substantive minister, all presidents, and I've checked from the days of President Rawlings, they wait for the substantive minister to be appointed, vetted by Parliament, approved, and then they are consulted before deputy ministers are appointed. In this case, for the first time in this country's history, the president has, when there was no substantive minister for trade, the president has appointed a deputy minister of trade. No consultation. And this is the first time we are having a former attorney general as president. And this is what he's doing. Yes, we know it's a may, but best practice. Best practice. I know it's a may, but best practice. What has been the tradition? President Rawlings, President Kufuor, President Mills, President Mahama. What is the rush for? What is the indecent haste about? Why can't you wait for Honorable Katie Hammond, who I pray does not get the votes and does not succeed, because we must reduce the number of ministers? What does it take to wait and be compliant with this provision?
Your time is up.
So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your indulgence. We will continue to vote against these ministers. It's about the principle. It is time to reduce the number of ministers and be sensitive to the plight of suffering Ghanaians. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I come back to the right. Yes, Deputy Majority Leader.
I said, Mr. Speaker, just for the record, our colleague who made a submission just before I got on my feet had made some constitutional submission. Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect, he sought to suggest that His Excellency is in breach of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, he should not mislead himself and others. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I have nothing more useful to add. We close our second slot, and the Majority Leader will have a bite on our third slot. Thank you so much.
The third person from my left, who is going to be the third? You have said 3, and so 2 have spoken. It's left with 1 person. Yes, Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I thought the 3 you gave us exclude the leadership, so that the minority leader and the majority leader can have an opportunity to also speak to the matter. Mr. Speaker, so and then the leadership can speak. Mr. Speaker, that will mean that I will not be given the opportunity to speak as ranking member of the
What
committee.
persuaded you to think that way? The words were clear and unambiguous. 3 from each side of the House. What did you get from these simple words to think that after the 3, the leadership will be given opportunities? Minority leader, you haven't persuaded me at all. If it's a request that, because you heard your colleagues from the majority side, that the majority leader will be their 3rd person and he will conclude their debate. That is what the deputy majority leader concluded with. Oh, you have men here, plenty men and women, they are here. Yes. So, you have to take up the battle and then conclude it.
Yes,
minority leader, are you not?
Mr. Speaker, I am making an appeal to you to allow the leadership to conclude on this matter. Mr. Speaker, if our colleagues are not ready to debate, they can give their slot to us. They can give their slot to us and we'll use it appropriately. So I'm begging of you, please give us your slot and we'll use it appropriately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Chief Whip.
Mr. Speaker,
are you going to debate?
Mr. Speaker, no.
All right.
I want to make a request in support of the minority leader's position. Mr. Speaker, fortunately, our colleagues on the other side are not very enthusiastic about the debate. So we are not going to take much time. I'm making an appeal that you allow, after our 3rd person have debated, our leader, the ranking member on the committee, to make the final submission on the part of the minority. It's an appeal we are making to you, Mr. Speaker. It's very dear to us, very important to us, Mr. Speaker.
I will not renege on my decision. So if the ranking member is going to speak on your side, that will be the 3rd person, and we will proceed. Ranking member, you may make your contribution now. Deputy Majority Leader, one day I will give a directive that this your hand that you've been swinging, it will be cut off. Yes, ranking member, you may contribute to the debate. That's the end of your slot. 3 from each side of the House. So your leader will do the 3rd. Okay, go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 4 years ago, on the 29th of March 2019, the NPP government, under the leadership of His Excellency the President, held the Kenke Party at the Ministry of Finance. And the Kenke Party was to celebrate what they call a hat trick. The Speaker, at the time, they described the hat trick as successful Eurobond issuance. 1, 2, completion of an IMF program. And 3, cedi appreciation. The Speaker, 4 years yesterday, Ghana has defaulted in the payment of that Eurobond that we issued. 4 years yesterday, we are begging China, in fact, as we speak, our finance minister is in China, begging the Chinese taxpayer and the Chinese authorities to forgive us debt that Ghana government has borrowed from China. Mr. Speaker, we are struggling to meet the IMF conditionalities 4 years on. The Ghanaian cedi has depreciated 20% in the first 2 months of the year 2023, 4 years on. Mr. Speaker, this calls for a major case study. This calls for a major case study. Mr. Speaker, if our minister leaves China, he'll be heading to Paris with the hope that he will beg European banks and European sovereign agencies to forgive us in terms of debt that we have accumulated from them. We are going to ask for debt forgiveness from the European government, Mr. Speaker, before our minister will be heading to Washington and to beg IMF to give us a program. Mr. Speaker, Ghana is in a massive economic difficulty. Mr. Speaker, this calls on us to act differently. This calls on us as a country to actually behave differently. Mr. Speaker, the very people that we are asking them to forgive us in terms of the debt that we have accumulated from them are calling on us. Not long ago, the German ambassador has said to us that Ghana's size of government is overbloated. He has said to us that there is room for us to reduce the size of government and government expenditure. So, Speaker, you can't ask others to contribute. Particularly, Mr. Speaker, the international community to contribute at the time that you are not ready to contribute. So, Speaker, the German ambassador said, you cannot go to the international community and say, I need help, but I'm not willing to cut the size of my government and my own budget expenditure. So, Speaker, this is profound. This is profound. We are asking the German taxpayer, to actually forgo the investment they have made in the Ghanaian economy, yet we are not ready to sacrifice. So, Speaker, our position is that the president must act. The government needs to act to save the Ghanaian economy from collapse. But this can only be done. This can only be done if we send the right signal. So, Speaker, what is the right signal? The right signal is for us to send a signal that we are reducing the size of government and to get the Ghanaian taxpayer to be aware that the government is ready to do the heavy lifting. So, Speaker, all what we are doing now, we are transferring the burden of economic difficulty from us to the ordinary Ghanaian and the people that have invested in our economy. That is all what we are doing. That is all what we are doing. So, Speaker, we stand with the people of Ghana, and we are urging our colleagues, the MPP members of Parliament, to stand for Ghana and not to stand for your colleagues. So, Speaker, the nominees are our colleagues, but the principle is that it is not about them, it is about the Republic of Ghana. There may be our colleagues and our friends, but it's not about them. So, Speaker, some of them are relatives, but it's not about them. And I call on you that look them in their faces and vote against them for the Republic of Ghana, for the future of our country. So, Speaker, this vote should not be a vote by the minority alone. We are sending a signal to the international community. We are sending a signal to the Ghanaian taxpayer that we care. We are sending a signal to everyone that we in the NDC, we care. Join us and let's reject them. And colleagues, I urge you, please reject the appointment. Reject the appointment in the name of Ghana, because Ghanaians are watching us. The situation out there isn't good. Our economy is in bad shape, a very bad shape. It calls on all of us to sacrifice. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are ready. We are ready to sacrifice. And we are calling on them to join on us to sacrifice by rejecting the nominees and to send a signal to the president that, Mr. Speaker, we are ready to act. Mr. Speaker, it is sad. It is sad. It is clearly sad. Because, Mr. Speaker, it looks like the government of the day doesn't seem to care and doesn't seem to pay attention to public opinion. Doesn't seem to pay attention to public opinion. public opinion is clear on this matter. For once, the people of Ghana have united, and have sent a message to the ruling class that they are very much concerned about the way the country is being managed. Mr. Speaker, it is our responsibility as the ruling class to send a strong signal to the people of Ghana that we care. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are taking this action. The action is for the Republic of Ghana. It is for the people of Ghana. And the NDC is noted to be the political party that stands for the people of Ghana. We will stand for the people of Ghana, united as 136 members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, we reject this nomination. We reject this nomination and call on you, Mr. Speaker, to set the podium for us to be ready to vote tomorrow. And Mr. Speaker, tomorrow we will come here and vote against the nomination in full. And we believe that this singular gesture will send the right signal to the people of Ghana that all of us, we care. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Majority Leader, as the third and final contributor. 10 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, just to say that I lend my support for this House to approve of the 30th report of the Appointment Committee on His Excellency the President's nomination for appointment as ministers, ministers of state, and a deputy minister. Mr. Speaker, I've heard my colleagues say to us that the number of ministers is overly bloated. Mr. Speaker, today we have what we are going to have with these additions. I want to have a total of 86 ministers. Mr. Speaker, at the time of the Mills Mahama administration, at a point in time, you had 76 ministers. That time, there were only 10 regions and not 16 regions. Mr. Speaker, what does it mean? What does it mean? If you subtract 6 from 86, the number now climbs down to 80. You have 76. The fall is colossal. Can you believe this? Mr. Speaker, we have seen them before, their own administration. And yet outside there, the noise that they are generating, you had 76, this government, minus the additional 10 regions, would have 80. An addition of platform. That is monumental. Can you believe that? Mr. Speaker, as for what my colleague, the Honorable Kujutu Ablakwa, is saying in referring to Article 79, what does Article 79 provide? Article 79 provides that the President, in appointing deputy ministers, shall consult the Minister of State. The Speaker, when these ministers, whose possessions that we are filling, resigned, ministers of state were appointed to hold over as ministers. Mr. Speaker, read the Constitution well. So when the President appoints the minister who is in charge, it's in fulfillment of Article 79. Unless your understanding of Article 79 is different. Unless your understanding of Article 79 is different. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and I heard my colleague, the minority leader, in commencing his argument, referred to an MPP government. The government of Ghana is the government of Ghana. The government of Ghana is the government of Ghana. It is the administration of the MPP, not MPP government. The government is the government of Ghana. You should understand that. Mr. Speaker, and who was talking about the depreciation of the city? Who is talking about the depreciation of the cedi? Adjournment. From Milson's time to President Mohammed's time, the cedi depreciated altogether from when you assumed the reins of government to when you left. The cedi has depreciated by 385%. Today, the depreciation is in the region of 300%. Not the best. One would admit, not the best. But compared to your own performance. Mr. Speaker, and then somebody said, the honorable deputy minority leader was saying that the 1D, 1F is a monumental failure. I think we've dealt with this when we're debating the president's message on the state of the nation. 106 factories on stream with 148 at different levels of construction. That is a monumental failure. Your own, the only one that we're able to do, Commander Sugar Factory. What is it? Only one. And you are saying that our efforts at trade and industry is a monumental failure. In any event, if we should judge by the performance of manufacturing in the country, Mr. Speaker, the record speaks for itself. In 2014, under your tenure, when you said that industry was faring well, 2014 industry grew at 1.1%. Under your watch, 2015 it was 1.2%. 2016 it was 4.3%. Under your watch, the last 3 years, industry grew at 2.2%. I mean, where from this? Where from this? Yes, because James is watching. He said, why am I praying up? He is the master of that. He's the master of arms throwing. With a figure. So look at that. The first 3 years under Kufuor, 15.6, 10.5 in 2018, 6.4 in 2019, 10.8%. With a figure, manufacturing, under your watch, in industry, manufacturing holds the key. Under your watch, 4.8% in the last 3 years. Even during the COVID years, the last 3 years of manufacturing, the growth of manufacturing is 4.8%. Under your watch, it was 4.3%. So when you hear people talk about the abysmal performance of industry and manufacturing, it's laughable. We're not referring to the figures. The figures tell no lie. The figures tell no lie. I believe going back to re-argue is of no consequence. And I will just plead that we approve of the ministers and move on. And Mr. Speaker, when we conclude the debate, as I'm concluding, I will entreat you to put the question and we shall decide today on the ministers. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Honorable members, we have come to the conclusion of the debate, and the question is to be put tomorrow. I proceed accordingly to adjourn the House to tomorrow at 10 in the phone room. The House is adjourned.
So Parliament has adjourned after such a contentious day of sitting in Parliament today. The majority MPs expected and they wanted a vote to happen today, but it did not happen. The Speaker has adjourned the House tomorrow. What we expect to happen tomorrow is that the ballot boxes and the booth will be brought in and MPs will be asked to vote. NPP MPs are livid about the situation. They clearly wanted the vote to happen, and they say that they do not understand why the Speaker of Parliament will adjourn the House to tomorrow. NDC MPs are staying in the chamber. Our understanding is that they want to do a caucus meeting. They want to have some conversation as to some of the key issues that have come up so far. But it's been a contentious day in Parliament where MPs have been debating the report of the Appointments Committee on the President Akufo-Addo's ministerial nominees. The expectation of the minority was that they were going to vote today, and they had said always that they were going to reject President Akufo-Addo's nominees. The NPP MPs, on the other hand, have said that they wanted to stay and vote. The Speaker of Parliament early on gave them about 1 hour to go and deliberate and then come back to the floor for a decision to be taken. It took close to 4 hours. No decision was taken, and then as about almost 7:30, the Speaker of Parliament returned and then asked that the debate is continued for the debate to conclude. The debate has now concluded. The only thing left is for members of Parliament to go out there and vote on the key issues that is said to be discussed, whether or not Katie Hammond, whether or not MP for Inshiaso Stephen Amwa, whether or not Obi Amwa, whether or not Amin Adams, whether or not Stephen Asamoah Boateng, whether or not all these persons that President Akufo-Addo has appointed as ministers of state or deputy ministers or ministers of state at substantive ministries will get to have their scrolls of office given to them by the president. That fate is now in the hands of MPs, and it's been such a long day of sitting. It's 8:30 by the clock now, and MPs are now headed home. They are going to return early tomorrow, 10 o'clock a.m. in the forenoon. And the expectation will be that they would have to return and vote on the nominees as the president did. They have been vetted. The minority say, as a matter of principle, they do not want to approve those specific persons to become ministers. Not necessarily because they are not qualified, but because President Akufo-Addo's government is bloated, in their words. Today we saw here in Parliament, he just left the national chairman of the National Democratic Congress, Johnson Eksedu Nketia. He was here together with the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of the NDC. Sami Jemfi was also here. Early on, we had Justin Frimpong Kodua. Justin Frimpong Kodua is still here, and while he's talking to some of his colleagues, and the minority, they're having some sort of a caucus meeting to try and prime themselves ahead of that contentious, critical vote tomorrow. The main business today should have been the 3 tax bills, the revenue measures, but Parliament did not even make time to deal with that because of this matter of the ministerial nominees. Parliament is set to go on break next week, and so these last few days, tomorrow is the last sitting for the week, then next week MPs will be expecting that some of these key issues will be taken. The ministerial nominees would expect that they will be approved before Parliament goes on break. We did have an understanding that the majority wanted to do some trade, and that they wanted to help the majority reject Electoral Commission CI, which would have made the Ghana card the sole identity document, and so they were willing to actually sign some undertaking to back that. But the minority clearly will not support that and will not do that, for which reason they did not have that arrangement. And so the House has just adjourned. You see a lot of conversations still happening on the floor. Caucuses meeting, haggling at each other, try to prepare themselves for what will be a contentious sitting tomorrow, where a vote will expect to happen. Not only the vote, but also the controversial tax measures. Those 3 tax measures that the minority have said will collapse businesses will all be debated, and the majority side, the leader, beckon on his colleagues to come closer for some meeting of a sort. So that has been the scene here in Parliament. Very soon we'll hand you over back to the studio. MPs clearly not in agreement as to some of the things that have been happening. My name is Kweku Asante. This has been our live, continuous coverage of scenes and the proceedings here in Parliament. Tomorrow we'll be back again, same time at 10 o'clock a.m. in the forenoon, where MPs will be back to continue the debate. And it's expected that a vote will happen. You will see the Electoral Commission boxes, a vote will be taken, and that decision will be taken.
We're bringing you live proceedings from Parliament, and you heard there our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante giving us a wrap of events for today. It's been a long day in Parliament. We're hoping that the debate will happen. The debate actually did happen, but the voting has been postponed and to tomorrow. And the Speaker, as it stands now, has adjourned sitting to Friday, and will still bring you proceedings from there. We've been seeing in your shorts, at least, the MPs there deliberating. Some happy about the decision, others unhappy about it. One of the nominees there was in your short, Obi Amwa, was in Parliament. I was hoping that we could check with our parliamentary correspondent on the presence of the other nominees, some of them who are also MPs, whether they were in Parliament throughout the entire sitting and the debate. So we're bringing you proceedings from Parliament on what actually transpired today. We set out to also take a look at the 3 new taxes as part of the revenue mobilization exercise in securing an IMF deal, but it appears that also has been in limbo. That's not happening tonight. But once Parliament resumes sittings tomorrow, hopefully after the debate, we'll get to see that voting and know whether these ministers or the nominees for the various ministerial appointments will be approved or not. This is the Joy News channel, and we've been live on Facebook, myjoyonline.com, and all our social media platforms. And that's how we wrap up our coverage for tonight. And do stay with us. We have PM Express Business Edition coming up at 9 p.m. And also before that, we have sports. It's been a good day for the Black Stars as well. Ketsi Antoine Semenyo will give you details of that before we bring you PM Express Business Edition. And remember to brush your teeth before you go to bed tonight, and do same in the morning, but do it with Pepsodent. Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. We have Pepsodent Charcoal, Pepsodent Herbal, or Pepsodent Triple Protection, because with Pepsodent, every smile definitely matters. I am Emefa Apawu. Many thanks for your company.